All right, all right, all right. It is. You cannot make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. I am your host, David Washington, and with me today, our esteemed guest, Commissioner of District 6, Mike Scott. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We really appreciate it. I want to thank your staff for accommodating us and making this all happen. This is really, really great. It's great to be back in the county administration building and getting to know you a little bit more. So thank you. I want to thank my staff, Angelina, our producer, John D. Maria. I always screw that up. But we'll just have a casual conversation. Okay?
I'm ready.
All right. So, Commissioner Scott, your journey. How did you get here?
Knocked on a lot of doors.
Indeed.
My journey to commissioner, I've lived in Orlando my entire life, born and raised. I ran for school board unsuccessfully 3 times. Mm-hmm. And the motivation to run for school board was the motivation to be able to serve in a higher capacity when it came to mentoring, my passion.
Yes.
It's something that I fell into that I wasn't really looking to do. I wanted to be a cop, join the military, and, play cops and robbers of sorts.
Okay.
So I fell into the work of mentoring through the Public Defender's Office in 2004. And so from there on, I went to work with a number of local organizations, the school district, Great Oaks Village, volunteering as a mentor, pretty much just giving what I got.
Right.
Like I said, I lived here my whole life, and so I'm a product of Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Junior Magic, Boy Scouts. And so I've had a number of programs, but also I had mentors in different roles that helped me become the man I am and the commissioner I am, and so kind of giving back.
Excellent, excellent. And your service to the community is incredible, and the mentorship really stands out, like you said, your mentorship throughout your life and giving back to the youth of Orange County, helping all youth achieve. Hiya?
Yes, sir. You said it right. Somebody be like, hey, yeah, hey, yeah. So you definitely said it right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tell me a little bit more about that organization. It really stood out to me.
Okay, so Helping All Youth Achieve was incorporated in 2009. And it was me and my fellow classmates, all college students, all military veterans.
Yes.
And so what happened was we were already doing mentoring and doing Boy Scouts and things of that nature, right? Dr. Alzo Riddick, who is our mentor, said you guys should start a nonprofit to help you do the mentoring stuff, like to enhance it, because we'd ask for different donations and things like that. And he said you'd be more successful if you have a nonprofit. People would give you more and be able to do more, because we were kind of just doing it on our own, because we were in a program called Soldiers to Scholars. And so in Soldiers to Scholars, you had to give 5 hours a month of mentoring. No, sorry, 5 hours a week of mentoring with kids, and then you get your college paid for.
Okay.
And so in that, we were doing a whole lot more. And so when he saw, he's like, you guys need to really start a nonprofit. And so Charlie Prosper, who was our founder, Brian Childs, Julian, we all came together and started a nonprofit initially to serve elementary kids, because we were doing the walking school bus, walking kids to and from school. We had an after-school program. And it just kind of grew from that to deal with youth and young adults who are involved in the criminal justice system.
Wow. And the mentorship, it's a special place in my heart, because when I was in Illinois and part of my young career working with children and families, I was a mentor to a young man who was very introvert. And by the time the program ended for him, he was on the basketball team. He was active in his community. And so I know how mentorship means, what it means to a lot of people who do take advantage of the opportunities. So seeing that throughout your history, the mentorship, that touches a lot of people, and I'm sure you've seen some success stories.
Yeah, I have a couple of young men who give back, but before that, one of them went to state prison, one of them went to federal prison. And so they're now back in the communities. They both have jobs. One of them coming home from prison, went to prison for 5 years at 15 years old, came home and started working at a local restaurant here, specifically Golden Corral.
Okay.
And you know, these young people like, oh, I don't want to work in fast food. I want to be this and I want to be that. And so for him to come home and get with a job and stick with that job for almost 3 years,
Okay.
and save his money and start his own business, a clothing line, I think was just a testament to his character and wanting to, you know, grow. But also on his birthday, he's now done it 5 years. He does an event called P-Day. His name's Paul Josephat.
Okay.
And so he has he has that event every year on his birthday, like a community fair of sorts.
Nice.
It's gotten so big in Apopka. And now this year was the first year we did it at the fairgrounds because it kind of outgrew the park we were doing it in Apopka.
When does that occur?
In April.
In April?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent. I got to make sure I get an invite to that.
Sure.
That sounds like a
100%.
really good, success story. Okay, so we talk politics on this show.
Okay.
And your election was, something to talk about. It was very contentious. What lessons learned were there on your part in regards to that election?
Knock on more doors. As you know, with my vote, the initial night, I won. Then I lost, then I won again,
Yes.
and then we went through a 13-hour, almost 12 hours and some change recount. I think it was like
Yes.
1:45 in the morning when they said, okay, you won by 6 votes.
Oh, yes.
But first it was 1 vote.
Yes.
And so when I think of that journey, I was thinking, man, I should have knocked on more doors.
So this is a ringing endorsement for knocking on doors, field work, right?
Knock on doors.
There you go. You heard it here from Commissioner Scott. Knock on doors.
You can have all the money in the world. You can have the highest paid, most super consultants, but nothing will take the place of knocking on the door in someone's neighborhood and having a conversation about introducing yourself and who you are as a person. I think that's important. You can talk about the issues, but it's important for people to know who you are. What are your values? Your upbringing. How can I relate to you and your experiences? And I think sometimes that's missed.
Yes.
They focus so much on whatever the issue is of the time. I need to know who you are. Then we can talk about the business. But who are you as a person? What are your values?
That I'm 100% with you on that. Field operations is so important for exactly what you just said. So that's awesome. Your first year is coming to a close. What surprises have you found in your first year?
Government is slow, super slow. But it's so big. You think of Orange County as an institution. We have a $7 billion budget.
Yes.
Close to 11,000 employees when you incorporate the constitutional officers. But core here, we have 8,000 employees and all the services that it encompasses, and trying to get things done for the 2 million people that call Orange County home. It's not easy.
Right.
And so trying to find the best answer for most all people, knowing that not everybody's going to be happy. It may not come when they want it or even when they need it, but just trying to figure out how we do things more efficiently so that it meets the need of whoever the individual organization that is looking for the service.
A good portion of your county, of your district, incorporates the city of Orlando, correct?
It does. I have 4 city commission districts within County District 6. So that's District 6 with the city, Commissioner Burns, District 5 with Commissioner Hill, a small sliver of District 3 with Commissioner Stewart, and then District 4 with Commissioner Patty Sheehan.
Wow. So cooperating with those commissioners within the city, I'm sure that's a lot to juggle.
It's a partnership. It definitely requires intentional communication and just knowing that, we are partners in service, even though we may not serve on the same boards.
Correct. Do you find the challenges of working with the city commissioners different than some of the issues that, say, some of the other districts that have less cities or municipalities to work with?
Well, no. Actually, I think I'm uniquely positioned. I've had a great working relationship and volunteership with the city commissioners, some of them even before they were elected.
Exactly.
And so Commissioner Hill would help out with snacks and stuff for my kids before she got elected, before I was elected. Commissioner Burns, in his role as the CEO of the Orange Blossom Family Health Center,
Right.
I would refer kids who needed medical care. And so having these existing relationships that predate the election serves a better foundation for me with our city commissioners. And so then when we get into the politics and the business of the county and the business of the city, it's not just business. We have a good foundational relationship to build from.
So the relationships with other electeds, other advocates in the community, as well as establishing those relationships with your voters, constituents, and residents matter a lot, especially if you have those relationships established prior to elected office.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So going into your second year, what are your priorities?
So it goes without saying, you hear this often, but housing. Yes. I mean, that is the biggest thing. I toured a property in the initial phases. Well, not initial phases, but in the finishing touches. They were just kind of like putting up the framing and stuff. And so I went back to this property after they had opened and they're starting to lease. They have one building done. They have 2 other buildings. $2,500 a month for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. Right just at 1,000 square feet. It's not in any wealthy area, and that's the base. Then they have parking and valet trash, and then cable. And so you're looking at 26 and some change. So you put $30,000 just to live in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Wow. And
so most people think $30 an hour is a decent salary, and it is for this area, right?
Sure.
And so if I'm making $60 a year and I have to give $30,000 just to live,
half of your salary,
and we haven't even gotten into light bill, we haven't gotten into rent, car insurance, which is ridiculously high now for a lot of folks, and so figuring out ways that we can mitigate that, figuring out ways that we can increase our housing inventory. Figuring out where something that may take 20 steps, how can we make that take 10? Because a lot of that is the supply chain, but also it's our process from the time that a builder, whether it's an apartment complex or a single family development, from the time they put into an application for a permit to the time they ever put a shovel in the ground, how quickly can we expedite that? Because we know the longer it takes to build, the higher the cost, potentially the change in financial terms. And so figuring out how to make it easier for the folks that are wanting to bring the housing, but also for the folks that say, hey, I have too much or it's too dense or whatever, it's going to create more traffic. So it really is a delicate balance. But, regardless of where you live at, everyone can agree we need more housing here. We have about 1,000 people living here a week. And, $2,500? I had to keep my face. I'm like, what? Wait, I'm looking. I had to double, for this?
Right.
So.
And I know that in West Orange, there's exponential growth happening. And so there's that pressure too. Is there a conversation with developers about, like you said, mitigating some of the costs, or are there ways through that?
So we have the Live Local Act, almost a little over $800 million or so coming down from the state that will be divvied up across the counties and municipalities.
Great.
And so hopefully that will help. We're still waiting for some additional guidance on how those dollars will be allocated and how we can spend those. But, Orange County is unique in the sense that we have our local housing trust. You had the Sandowski Trust from the state level, and there was a lot of money there, and more often than not, they were taking that money, using it for other things. And so having something that we can control and can be intentional about how we can, develop and foster growth at a faster rate. But there are conversations with developers about workforce housing, you have land trust to lock in the price. I learned something recently in a commission or something called apodments. And so an apodment is a micro units.
Okay.
And so maybe I'm single. I don't need a lot of stuff. I just need a place to lay my head and get to work. And so creating an apodment, and so I get a job that maybe allows me to make more money so I can get something a little bit bigger. And so having just a wide range of options as opposed to apartment, townhome, house, right? Those that's pretty much what and so how do we expand the variety of options and also the variety of price? Because I can't think of anything that's below $1,500. I think that's probably, and that's cheap,
right?
But even then, those are few and far in between, and those in areas where you may have a landlord that probably isn't the best. So And so for me, housing will always be the most pressing issue.
Sure.
Because if I, as an individual, young, old, rich or poor, do not have my basic needs met, how can we begin to talk about anything else? Housing has to become first. Then we can talk about jobs and mental health and education and advancement. But I don't got a place to live.
So how can you address, like you said, those other
Exactly.
issues?
You gotta keep the focus, and I think the focus for me is housing, and then after that, all those other services that come.
Excellent, good point. So we know that your residents, your constituents, their priority will also be housing. What other priorities would your constituents say would be some of their kitchen table issues?
So their kitchen table is my kitchen table, and that's Orla Vista. I've said it often. The county failed them. Mm-hmm. There was no reason those individuals should have been flooded, even though it was a 100-year event.
Right.
There were plans that kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed, and you have people who had 6, 7, 8 feet of water in their house.
Yes.
You have some people who are still not living in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
I know of one person in particular has a shed in her backyard, and that's what she's living in.
Oh, wow.
Because when you go inside her home, it's just the framing. And so what can we do to make them whole or near whole? Telling them to get in line and wait isn't good enough. I was just having a conversation, and we'll continue to have some conversations about Orla Vista. Mm-hmm. But we have the benefit, or at least I do and my colleagues do, of going home, AC's working, heat's working, there's a bed. That isn't the case for the people that we serve. And so if we can't meet that need, then what is our core purpose? And so trying to figure out how we expedite that, whether it's federal funds, state funds, because, we're working on it, isn't good enough. This is now over a year since this happened.
Right.
And the fact that they are still, not whole doesn't sit right with me. And so that is the forefront when I talk about housing. We're doing the mitigation piece, but that's to prevent something like that from happening. But what about the people who were impacted? So that is going to be an issue of mine until it's not an issue anymore.
Okay. For the people who were impacted, I know there's some opportunists who are looking at Orla Vista to buy land and cheaply. Are residents trying to stay in the community and rebuild and not leave?
So I'll tell you kind of what we just had a meeting with Orla Vista recently, and yes, residents want to stay there. It is that home family feel. All the neighbors know each other. Yes. I grew up in that area, around that area, just off of Hiawassee. Went to Orla Vista Park. I went to Oak Hill Elementary. If that wasn't there, I would have went to Orla Vista because it was less than 2 miles away.
Okay.
But I say all that to say they do want to stay in their homes, but they're open to opportunities. It's like, hey, Mr. Commissioner, if the money's right, I might move. But at the same time, the house they have now for the price that they bought it, in some cases, is double or triple elsewhere. And so do they even have the options if they're paid market rate or above market rate? Would they even have an option to be able to find something? And so for me, it's getting them whole, regardless of whether or not they want to move. And then if they decide they want to move, that certainly is their right. But right now, we need to make sure that they're good.
Exactly. So that being your concern there, are there other priorities that you have moving forward beyond your second year, your third year, hopefully your second term?
Orange County is a little bit different in that we don't have our own police department.
Right.
The sheriff's office across the county are all independently elected, with the exception of Miami-Dade, which is going to change with the legislature. But so we act as the bank of sorts and the steward of the money for the sheriff's office, but we do not dictate the operations. And so knowing that crime is a concern, particularly violent crime from young people, gun violence, especially figuring out, which is core to what I've done, what do we do for our young people to engage them in a way where they're not wanting to post pictures of guns or shoot people or feel that they need to turn to crime.
Right.
I think they do it because they think it's cool. They may see it in a music video or in a video game. I've had 2 young men I work with, one 11 with a automatic weapon. And when I challenged them, Mr. Mike, it's just a prop. It's not a prop. No. I know what guns look like. I know what real guns look like. I know what fake guns look like. And so when I asked them why they posted, it's just, I'm just doing it for the gram, or I'm doing it for the video. It ain't nothing. But to me, it's something. And so what can I do to engage you in a way where you don't have time to do that? How did you get the gun in the first place? Who was the individual that gave it to you? And we can't solely rely on law enforcement. It's a community issue. It's not mom or dad. It's not the police. It's everybody's issue. Sure, mom and dad are core to, how we move and how we don't move, right?
That's true.
But mom and dad need help. If mom got to work, sometimes mom and dad got to work 2 jobs to pay that $2,500 a month in rent. And so if mom and dad is not there, who's there to kind of stand in the gap while mom and dad are trying to provide? And then what if mom and dad isn't there? One thing I learned, I'm 41. And so one thing that becomes apparent to me with every young person I encounter is that I was so fortunate to have a mom, dad, and grandparents. Everybody didn't get that. And so you don't realize until you get older how critical mom and dad were in your upbringing, and how grandma and grandma kind of poured into you, until you see people who don't have it. And as you start to talk with them, wow, if only you had a grandma like mine that could cook a plate like she did, but also fuss me out like she did when I made a mistake after I'd already got it from mom and dad.
Exactly.
Now grandma said, I heard what happened. Come sit here and talk to me, baby. So I've just been fortunate in that to have good parents, good grandparents, and good mentors. I mean, and I know it works because I'm not in jail,
Successful. Yeah. I remember growing up, my parents looked at my brother and I and said, you all are endangered species or something to that effect. And because we grew up in the 80s during the crack epidemic and so forth and so on. And so, there was a lot of, gun violence, gang violence, and they were protective, but they made sure that they were there. They were my grandparents, they were aunts and uncles, and they were our mentors. And that kind of brings us back full circle to your work as a mentor and the lives that you touched. In closing, is there something inspirational that you can leave our viewers and our listeners to remember you by, but also give them something to think about?
You're only going to be disappointed for one or two reasons. Someone's going to say something that you don't like, or they're going to do something you don't like. But also that's because we have an expectation of people believing and moving in ways that we would. And so you have to respect people for their differences, even if you don't agree. I think a lot of the challenges we have is that I expect you to be pro this or anti that because that is my belief. I think a lot of the issues we have is people are not willing to sit down and have a conversation just as you and I are having here today, because you believe this and I believe that, so I'm not talking to you. Or you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican, or you believe this faith and I believe that faith. And there's always growth in the conversation, but you got to be willing to have the conversation.
Yes.
And so I look at folks, and even myself, when you get upset, wow, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he said that. I'm so mad. But he's not me, or she's not me. So how can I have an expectation on an entirely different person who's had a different set of beliefs, a different set of life experiences, a different set of appearances? I'm not saying I'm better. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying they're good and I'm bad about it. I'm just saying it's different. And I have to be okay with the differences, even if I don't like them or agree with them. And I think that is the biggest challenge that we have in society today, is that because you do this or do that, you are the bad person. I can't like you. Right. And I mean, there are some common things that we can all agree in terms of what's right and wrong or whatever. Certainly not doing things to kids, not lying, stealing. But like when it gets into the nuances of a woman's right to choose, or someone's right to worship, or even breastfeeding and things like that, like, your belief is your belief.
Correct.
And I think a lot of times when you look at, public policy and certain laws, sometimes people were trying to bring their personal beliefs into law and impose them on other people, as opposed to trying to figure out what those other people, those they represent, are looking for. It's like, I don't eat red meat or pork. Okay. So let's say you go out, it's like, hey, Commissioner, I got you this cheeseburger or this double cheeseburger from the best, and I'm not going to eat it. Had you talked with me first, you would have known, hey, let me get you some fish or some chicken or whatever, but you didn't talk to me first. You got the best thing in the world, but it wasn't for me. Talk to me first and you'll know what's for me, and then you get what I'm saying? And so that's how I feel.
Establish that line of communication. Yeah. Get to know a person before, stepping out and saying things that or assuming things that may not turn out to be true.
Yeah.
So
I made a commitment to the folks that I represent in the homeowners associations that they would see me consistently. And so I'm at every meeting, or I have presence at every meeting. And so my goal is to try to get to every other meeting. In the meetings that I don't make, my staff goes to for all of the HOA. I represent about 300,000 people, all of West Orlando. Wow. And so you can imagine all the different associations, Tangelo, Pine Hills, Orla Vista, Metro West. Yes. I have a little bit of a COE and Gotha, all these different areas, and making sure that they see me. So when they have a challenge, I'm not finding out from the news. I'm not finding out 4, 5, 6 months later. I'm finding out, when the issue is happening so that I can figure out how I can be a part of the solution.
Excellent.
So I think it's important for me to be accessible and available. I check and read my own emails. And I tell folks, let me know. You see something, I don't know what I don't know, but I don't know if you don't tell me. So if you see something, take a picture, send an email, So just having that in a relationship with the folks that I represent, because they're my bosses.
Exactly.
Keep them happy.
And that's the key word right there. Relationships, keeping those relationships, fostering those relationships, enhancing those relationships.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Scott, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Your staff, I want to thank them also. My staff, I want to thank them. And any closing words?
No, I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with me. District 6 at ocfl.net. You can email me, call me. I can't remember my number offhand, but, reach out. I'm available. I'm not hard to find.
Excellent. Please, if you enjoyed our conversation, like, share, and of course, as part of our community, comment. We love the comments. We love to hear what you have to say. And of course, hit that notification button. Tell everyone. Share this with everyone you know, especially you politicos. We know that you love this stuff. And again, you can't make this shit up.
You can't make this shit up.
All right. I'm David Washington, Commissioner Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.